So there's been lots of chat about titanium bikes recently, people claiming that it's the best material to build a bike out of. It's smoother than carbon, more comfortable than aluminium. There's supposedly a list of benefits as long as your arm. But there's also people calling it just marketing hype, and it's difficult to know who is right and what to believe. Well, today I wanted to make a video to shed some light on the truth of this material and to share my experience of riding this titanium bike from Reilly Cycleworks for the last few months, and to see, is this titanium thing all that it's cracked up to be? So firstly, a couple of caveats. The first one being that Reilly have sent me this bike. I've got it on loan from them, but they have not asked me to make this video, and all of the thoughts and opinions and things that I'm going to share is purely my own opinion and is not affiliated with Reilly in any way. Secondly, I've not ridden loads and loads of bikes, and so when I talk about comparison today, I'm primarily comparing it to my carbon Canyon Endurace and my aluminium Canondale Topstone. And all three of these bikes are kind of endurance geometry bikes, so I do think that it makes a good comparison, but I don't have the breadth of experience of having tested hundreds of bikes, and so bear that in mind. Okay, so titanium, why are we using it for bikes? So as a material, titanium or titanium alloys are strong, almost as strong as steel in fact, but the benefit that titanium has is it's a lot lighter than steel. Compared to aluminium, titanium is a lot stronger, but it's also more dense and so heavier. However, in the context of like a finished bike, because titanium is stronger, you don't need to use as much material, so like the tubing can be thinner, etc, etc. And so if you had two bikes like for like, one with aluminium and one with titanium, there actually wouldn't be a massive difference in weight because less titanium would have been used. Compared to carbon, titanium is never going to be as light, but titanium is strong in every direction, and due to the way that carbon layering is done, it's often only really strong in one direction and fragile in others. But unlike carbon, titanium has a bunch of other unique features that are quite interesting in the context of bike frames. Let's talk about corrosion. It's a fun topic. Titanium doesn't corrode, it doesn't rust. And in the UK, that is a massive advantage because the roads that we have, especially at this time of year, are covered in salt and mud and grit, which are horrible for corroding bike frames. And so it is a really nice characteristic of titanium. And if you combine the frame with some good quality bearings and the headset, the bottom bracket, and then the wheels, you're going to have a bike that can stand up to the harshest weather conditions. Combining this with its strength, you've got a bike that is robust and frankly just less needy than other bike materials. And that leads me on to longevity. Titanium bike is going to stand the test of time. Like I've said, it's strong, it's corrosive resistant, and it is going to outlive an aluminium or a carbon bike by a significant margin. Which for me at least just changes the mentality of thinking about buying one of these bikes. Titanium bikes are often at the higher end of the market, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But at that higher end of the market, you also get better design and better manufacture, and so when you combine that with the material of titanium, you're going to get a bike that will genuinely outlive the owner. So a little bit of an analogy, right? I like watches, and I hope that one day this watch will get passed down to my kids and perhaps even a generation further to their kids. This is built to last, it is extremely high quality, and it is going to continue doing a really good job of what it was made to do, which is telling the time for years and years to come. And when I think about titanium and, you know, especially bikes like this is the T325D from Reilly Cycleworks. It's got classic tubing, it's got that like classic bike shape, and this thing is just timeless. And it's going to continue being a great bike for what bikes were made to do for years and years to come. And I think that that just changes the way I think about it. And that leads me on to how these bikes look. Yes, it's vanity, but just look at this thing. It is genuinely stunning. Of course, it's not going to be to everybody's taste, but for me, and also from a lot of other people that I've spoken to, the attractiveness of a titanium bike is something that's kind of hard to put into words. If you've never seen a titanium bike in person, then go and find one, go and have a look at one. There's just a way that like the raw material looks, and also especially how it reflects the light. I think in the context of bikes, I've not seen anything else that looks like this. I mean, there's a reason that they're now making iPhones out of titanium. It's just all round a really interesting material. And speaking of raw materials, you'll see that most titanium bikes come in their like raw, natural titanium state, unpainted. And there's good reason for that beyond just the aesthetics. Paint will chip, it will wear, and it will degrade over time. But titanium, even in its raw state, just doesn't. It ages gracefully and slowly and just doesn't need the protection of paint that, say, an aluminium bike needs. Of course, if you want to, you can get it painted, but you don't need to. And don't get me wrong, I love painted bikes. Like, some of the stuff that Standard are currently doing is absolutely beautiful, but when you've got it in titanium, I'm just always going to opt for that raw look. It's beautiful in its nakedness, and I'm glad that it's got the confidence to flaunt it. But as far as a bike material from an aesthetic point of view, it's even more magic than that. Titanium bikes aren't immune from scratches and scuffs, and if you have like a cable running or something like that, you will see a mark appear over time. But because of its brushed material, all you have to do is give it a little bit of a polish with one of these like abrasive scouring pads, and you're going to be able to bring the frame back to like its original glory, how it looked as it came out of the factory. And for me, like, that's a flipping cool feature. Okay, so let's talk about comfort, which is probably the most controversial part of titanium bikes, and I am going to try here to be very careful with what I say. The first thing that I would say is, from my experience, riding this very specific titanium bike, I would say that it is the comfiest and smoothest bike that I have ever ridden. I know that smooth and comfortable are words that are often thrown around with titanium bikes, but it just seems to glide over the kind of imperfect roads that we have here in the UK. There's absolutely no buzz from the frame, and with some slightly wider tyres, I've got 28 mils on here, and some slightly lower pressures, honestly, it is just the most comfortable thing to ride. But the question is that 100% to do with titanium as a material? And I think the answer is no. So yes, titanium does have inherent material properties that make it a little bit more flexible than something like, say, carbon. And so there's no doubt that material choice is having an impact here, but I think that it would be naive to say that just because it's titanium, that means that it's comfortable. Within reason, bike manufacturers can design and create bikes to respond in a certain way. Essentially, good design is going to dictate how a bike feels or performs, and material is just one part of that equation. You also have the shapes of the tubes, the joins, the length of the tubes, the thicknesses, manufacturing tolerances, welding, etc, etc, etc. All of these things contribute to the overall design of a bike. Frame design is an art form, and I don't think that it gets enough attention within the sort of marketing cycling world. My point here is that material use does affect the performance or the feeling of a bike, but it's always in combination with the rest of the design. And I think we need to start paying more attention to the people and the companies who have designed the bike, rather than just the material that was used. Is it possible to create a really good feeling and comfortable aluminium bike? Yeah, I think it is. But in the same breath, it's also easy to make something that's harsh and uncomfortable, and no two bikes will be the same, even if the materials are. But for me, bikes like this Reilly represent incredibly good design in combination with using the properties of materials to the absolute best. Creating something that feels smooth and comfortable and responsive and fast, all of the things that you would want a bike to feel, but it's always going to be more complicated than just the material. And for me, it's bikes like this Reilly that represent that beautiful combination between excellent design and also using material properties in the absolute best way possible. And I think it's when you do all of those things together, you get those bikes that are just truly special to ride. But I can already hear your questions. Let's say that we've just got a manufacturer who has really good design. Is titanium the best material to use? I'll get to that in a minute. First, let's talk about the major downside of titanium, and that is cost. Although it's like fairly abundant on Earth in its like raw ore form, titanium is very energy intensive to be able to extract the metal that we need to make things like bikes, etc. And it also is very energy intensive in how we need to manufacture it and how we join it and how we machine it, etc, etc. And all of that leads to quite an expensive material cost, which is a big reason why titanium bikes are found at the higher end of the market. And I think that that's a shame, because as we've talked about, the material has a lot of benefits for the application of a bike frame, and it's a shame that we're not going to be able to get that at an accessible level. But I also do think that there's some benefits of this material being at the higher end of the market. it's going to last, and so really it is like more of an investment piece. Also, the way that titanium bikes are made with welding, etc., it's really well suited to like custom and bespoke bikes. And like I've been alluding to, bikes like this are only special because of the design and the craftsmanship that goes into them. I mean, look at the welding on this bike, it's beautiful, and all of the little intricate details. It's clear that it has been made and designed by people that are really passionate about what they're doing. And when you think about artisan products, it's that attention to detail, that passion that makes them so special. And when you've got a material like titanium that is cool and has got so many good properties, it just does it justice when you pair it with a bike manufacturer that sits at that end of the scale. Yes, it's sad that it's not accessible, but I also think that this material just deserves that kind of love and attention. But to answer the question, and taking all of this into consideration, my opinion is that for an all year round bike in a country like the UK where the weather is poor and the roads are rubbish, I think that titanium, with its robustness, its resistance against the weather, its longevity, and when done well, its smoothness, could perhaps represent the best material for a bike, period. And that might be a bold and naive thing to say, but with my experience, at this point right now, I truly believe that. Anyway, I am gonna have to sadly send this bike back to Reilly at some point, but I'm about to go and open a savings account because I would really like to add a titanium bike to my collection one day, even if it takes me a few good years to get there. A little bit of a different video from me today, but I hope you enjoyed it, and leave some comments down below. It'd be great to have a bit of a chat about this titanium thing and bike materials, etc. And I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.